take the conversation forward and welcome on board Devina Mehra, and who better than her to throw light on how the year gone by has been, and more importantly, what lies in the year ahead. Devina, hi, morning. Always good to be chatting with you. But first, let's analyze how it's been personally for you the year gone by with your funds doing so well. And you've managed to really wade both sides on the way up and, for India on the way down as well, I should say, and including the volatility that it came about with.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year in advance to everybody at your end as well as the viewers. May it be a great year, a prosperous year, a blessed year for everyone. Yes, I mean, 2024 was a good year, even though, as always, we were conservative. So we did not go towards the small caps, micro caps, and manage volatility. So this year we spent, I think, 1.5% on hedges because we saw volatility several times in the year, but each time it was short-lived, which was good. But as I say, insurance doesn't go waste just because you didn't get hospitalized that year. So it's been a good year. The flip side of the good year and the good times we've been having in general, I mean, barring the very last few weeks, has been that the expectations for investors, particularly new investors, but even some old investors, have run ahead of expectations. I mean, I have people coming and telling me that I don't want great returns. The 30% is good enough for me. So if you can triple in 3 years, which I said, yes, it has happened, but doesn't mean that it will happen every 3 years. And the only thing certain with taking high risk is that you're running the risk of high losses. High returns are not certain. So I think and especially this year, when not just the good stocks, in fact, good stocks probably less than the riff-raff have gone up. So that's the lesson that probably is the investors may not have learned, especially investors who come in the last few years and who have seen nothing but the market going up.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? Because since those COVID lows, we've been just so spoiled with the kind of parabolic returns that the market has given you. I mean, anything that you touched up until, last year that did give you good returns without even sort of thinking about it. But how do you then prep brace investors, Devina, who are anticipating that 30% kind of return even going forward? How do you sort of gear them up and prep them up for the year ahead? You think they need to firstly begin with hunkering down their expectations? Because what happened in the last 4 years is not going to replicate itself in the next.
Right. So one thing you must remember also is that why we had that bull run from the COVID lows. So we have this impression that Indian equity market should give you about 15, 16% because that's been the long-term compounding. But in between, there was a whole decade, that 2010 to 20 decade, where returns were very subnormal. So if you had put in 100 rupees in 10 years, it would have become 230 rupees when fixed deposits alone would have given you something like 200. So you got no returns for being in equity market. I mean, contrast that with the 80s, where at the beginning of the decade, if you put in 100 rupees, it would have become 700. So that's what created the room for the bull market. And I've been looking at long-term rolling returns, 10 years, 5 years, etc. So we're still not at any extreme end. So the risk of a sustained crash is only when you are at extreme ends. That I do not see. But for investors, I would say that if you have made money in a lot of money in some areas which look very frothy, get out of that and get into a steadier portfolio. But I would not recommend that you go into cash for whatever is your equity allocation. Don't have 100% of your assets in equity, but whatever is your equity allocation, remain invested because you may not catch the exact bottom. So people who've been sitting on the sidelines and saying, I will put in more, or I'll put in when the market goes down or there's a correction. My question is that, have you invested? Because there's also a risk to not being invested. Like this year, as I said, we bought hedges because we foresaw a volatility in March, in June. So volatility happened, but for a very short period. So if you'd gone into cash, we would have missed out that brilliant up move we've had. So be in a steady, conservative portfolio, but remain invested. That would be my recommendation.
Investor is Devina's call. Devina, morning. This is Snehi also joining in. I was recently reading something that you've written about asset classes, where very interestingly you've written that when there is a correction that follows a bull market and there is an uptrend visible, it's not the same set of stocks that will necessarily participate in this next bull run. You also did say that some sectors are looking frothy. So going ahead, heading into the next year, what's looking frothy, what should be avoided, and what's looking good? What do you think is going to participate in this rally, if at all we see a rally heading into next year?
You're so right, Sneha, that the thing is that, again, new investors don't know this, that even if the market goes up, very often the stocks that fall are not the stocks that go up in the next uptrend. And this is, you can see this because there are only about 4,000 odd stocks that trade in the equity markets, and listings have been many times more. So not only do stocks not go up, a lot of stocks just disappear into the blue yonder. So many more stocks, and like in 1990s, there were years when there were 1,200 IPOs and 1,300 IPOs, and many of those stocks have just disappeared. So always remember that. That's why I'm saying be in a steady portfolio. Because also in many of these smaller stocks, it's really impossible to have an effective stop loss when they fall like a stone. There are no hedges available because the only liquid hedge is on the Nifty, which doesn't move along with that. Coming to the sectors, I would not like to give a one-year outlook because we actually look at everything on a quarterly basis, and we will be doing the rebalance because the quarter is getting over in the next 10, 15 days. So this may change. As of now, where we are overweight has been pharma and healthcare, IT services, and auto components. So these are things where we are clearly overweight. A sector we were overweight for a very long time, for 3 years, was capital goods and industrial machinery, where we are now underweight. So, so most people discovered that sector only about a year or a little more than that in 2023. But we were overweight from October 21. Now we are underweight. So that's the way. I mean, banks and lenders, we are normally underweight. The only year we were market weight to overweight was 2022. Not that, I mean, they're looking particularly bad as of today, but I'm just saying that that's a sector we are generally underweight. Then things like energy, power, paints, durables, those are things we've been underweight. But that's normally a resultant of a bottom-up pick using our artificial intelligence and machine learning system. So that would be the broad pattern as of today. But every quarter we look at everything as that if we had cash today, where would we be? Where are the best bets today? And that's how we invest.
Point taken. So paints and some of those capital goods is where you have turned a bit underweight, but you talked about being overweight on IT, and I see in some of your portfolios, TCS, Infosys, Oracle Financial Services make it to the list. Why sticking to the large cap and not the mid cap, which have actually outperformed?
Yes, we had little more mid caps a few quarters ago. Now the weightage has become little more towards the large caps in IT. So I think a year ago we would have had more mid caps in IT. Now it's different.
Okay, so turned a bit. As far as financials are concerned, the latest talk of the town is that there is no differentiation left as such as far as the banks are concerned, because they're all hit by those asset quality issues. Deposit growth is lagging, and now credit growth will come under pressure as well. But at the same time, the valuations look comfortable. I do see SBI in some of your portfolios, but what about the other large private banking names?
We do have some of the private banks as well. I mean, banking and finance is too large a sector to just not have in your portfolio, because that's the highest weight in the index. Which I wish was not the case, but that's the case. So we always have banking exposure, except that, as I said, it's not as much as it is in the benchmark. And yes, we again, about a year ago, we would have had many more PSU banks. Now the mix is more towards the private sector banks. So, but you're right on the credit side. I'm always a nervous investor in banks and lenders, because as an outsider, you can never know the credit book, and on a macro basis, you see the pressures. And I was in a conference where Mr. KV Kamath also spoke, and I'd spoken about these two things separately, but I had not put it together. He said, where do you think the derivative losses of whatever, some 1.5 lakh crores or whatever the number is, are getting funded, and they are probably getting funded through unsecured credit. Maybe it's not through bank, but through this fintech and NBFCs, but they're getting funded somewhere in the credit system. So that was like a light bulb moment for me.
Fair point. Even at the other thing is this entire slowdown which is currently taking place. And, it's sort of a double-edged sword because on the other hand, you also have the currency sort of whacking you. While the FIIs have made a bit of a comeback, I mean, you can see why, they would be sort of not just... I won't say shorting, but not really deploying funds into India and other emerging markets as well. Do you see this continue? And do you think it's the dollar strength which will continue to play out for a large part of the next year too?
Situation for RBI is the first thing that comes to my mind, because you are in a situation where people are pressing for cutting interest rates to boost GDP growth, and you have inflation still remaining high, even if it's driven by food inflation. And then you're trying to manage the currency, because the thing also is that today the interest rate differential between India and US, that how much interest rates in India are higher than the interest rates in the US, is at several decades low, I think 2 decades low almost, or something like that. So that actually puts a pressure on currency, because your currency becomes stronger theoretically when your interest rates are higher. So if you cut interest rates, there's further pressure on the currency. And I mean, while I don't try to predict FII flows, simply because long-term data has never shown any correlation between FII flows and the market move. I mean, we've done that exercise. So now I only track FII flows from balance of payment perspective, not really from the market perspective. And also remember, now there's been a very long time, I think something like 12 years, when US in particular and developed markets in general have hugely outperformed emerging markets. I mean, it's been, sometime that trade will change. I'm not saying it's going to change next quarter or maybe not even next year, but sometime that trade will change, because themes never last forever. Some point, emerging markets will make a comeback. One will have to watch for that. But difficult job for RBI to manage interest rates and currencies. If you're talking of a slowdown in the economy or consumption, that part, I mean, the funny part is that people started talking about it only after the market correction started in October, November. But I have been talking about it for a long time, because if you look at the last financial year, 23-24, private consumption number in the GDP was at a 21-year low, the growth in that number. So, that the numbers were already there. And really the way to drive that on a longer term basis is the employment question, because only if you have employment will you have consumption. So that's one big thing, besides, of course, the inflation part, because in Indians' monthly budget, food is still quite a high percentage. So if food prices go up, it crowds out a lot of other consumption, even basics like soap and shampoo and all that.
Devina, thanks for that view coming in. But I was recently also reading somewhere where you've mentioned gold doesn't seem to be a particularly safe asset. But if you take a look at gold versus Nifty, gold has by far outperformed what the Nifty has done on a year-to-date basis. What's your view on gold coming in, especially when fundamentally so much is happening in the world in terms of geopolitics? On the other side, the rupee is plunging. Wouldn't that make gold seem at least more attractive compared to equities right now, or would it be the other way around?
So I would say that, first of all, do have an allocation to gold always in your asset allocation. So, but it cannot be a very high allocation, because the data shows that gold has not been a safe asset in dollar terms. So the early 80s price of gold was not crossed for 20 years, 22 years or something. It went down 60% in the interim. From the next high, it went down 40%. So that's what happened. So gold has had drawdowns or losses which are just as high as any other equity class. So why does gold look so much better to us? So our grandmothers were not wrong in buying gold, because gold at that time was the only currency hedge available. So when I started working, the dollar was 12 rupees. Today it is 85 plus. So it's been an 85% depreciation in the course of less than a career. So that's why the rupee chart of gold looks fine. But the point is now you do not have to hedge your currency bets only via gold. Now the liberalized remittance scheme, LRS of RBI is very attractive. You can invest anywhere in the world. I mean, in terms of quantum, it's a very generous scheme. And this is a cause for me that Indians do not think of investing globally, or they think investing globally means buying the 5 US stocks they have heard of, or just buying a NASDAQ ETF. That's not global investing. So well, I mean, since it's a cause for me, I have a product which invests all across the globe in all asset classes, which starts at only $10,000. That's like 8.5 lakh rupees. Normally, you would in a private bank, you won't get it for less than $1 million, because Indians should diversify. You cannot, look at a 20, 30-year goal and how I want to reach there without looking at currency, without looking at global diversification. So one of your New Year resolutions should be global diversification, because asset allocation only within a country is not good enough.
Taken, currency risk has to be taken care of, but 12 rupees, I don't even remember when that was, Devina. A long time ago perhaps, but...
It's the multi-bagger. Devina, I hope you did buy some dollar at 12 when you did start working.
That time it was a criminal offense to buy dollars. It was... even when you were traveling, you got $500 once in 3 years. This is well after I had started. Once in 3 years. Otherwise, you had to go with $20 on all the other trips.
My God, sounds like a different era altogether. But just shifting focus now to consumption, because I'm like very intrigued to hear your thoughts around the latest one, the Swiggies, Zomatos of the world, and even Paytm. All of these have done quite well in the last few months. Do you expect that also to continue come 2025?
That's not somewhere we have exposure. So I would not, have a very close view of any of those things. Though, I mean, I now see that there's like a lot of padding on the costs. I mean, in the food delivery services. I don't personally use it, but I see the data. And so at some point, I think there might even be some backlash on that. But yes, I mean, that's been in terms of where the growth has been in the economy, definitely that's been an area where there has been quite remarkable growth. The fact that it's therefore replaced something else is a different matter, that because of many of these services that Kirana stores are shutting down and all that, that's another matter. But yeah, and this has been there. But we are normally quite cautious in companies with very limited history. So we move cautiously on that.
Cautious as far as that space is concerned, but within pharma, you talked about how you're overweight, but what category? Is it just the CDMO players, which everyone has got positive about, or you're looking at diagnostics, hospitals? What's the area that's interesting you right now?
It's a mix. So we have been overweight now almost 2 years. So we from about the beginning of 2023, or maybe the second quarter of 2023 is when we started becoming overweight pharma, because our systems liked a lot of pharma names. And if you look at the period prior to that, there was a long period where pharma actually underperformed quite a lot. So anytime that kind of turn happens, which happened with capital goods also in 2021, I mean, people did not look at it for 2 more years because of this impression that it was a dog sector, which it had been for 12 years prior to that. So pharma also were kind of in that mode. So we'll have more pharma, some diagnostics, hospitals. I think we had something, I'm not sure whether we still hold it or not. So it's been a mix. So it's been pharma and healthcare together. We are quite overweight.
Right. So, Devina, can't finish off the year before taking down your list of books to read for 2025. What's been the top recommendation?
Oh, I mean, my all-time recommendations are always Daniel Kahneman's 2 books, Thinking Fast and Slow and Noise, and also, other books which talk about how your own brain trips you up, particularly in investing and managing your portfolio. But this year, one of the interesting books I read was Business Adventures by John Brooks. So this is a book both Warren Buffett and Bill Gates mention as one of their all-time favorites. And it's really business stories from 1930s to 60s. And you'd say, why would you want to read like kind of old business papers? But the point is, human nature does not change. So there are like a lot of parallels that you can draw with what happened later, what still happens. Another book, very slim book, which I think every investor should read, is John Kenneth Galbraith's Short History of Financial Euphoria. And it's beautifully written, and it talks about how bubbles form. And also it says that every time a bubble bursts, we want to find some villains. But actually, even the person on the street who was too greedy, who wanted these outsized returns, is also to be blamed. So remember that.
Devina, very quickly also give us an outlook of what your new book is going to be. We hear you're coming out with a book in January, just a few days from now. Give us a sense of what the book is about.
So this is about all that I have learned in and from the markets in 30 odd years. So it is about, it's something which I think will resonate both with the new investors as well as the veterans, because my whole thing has been to examine everything from first principles, including the things which people think are kind of the mantras of the market, like invest in only your circle of competence. And so I have examined everything, that what works, what doesn't work, what you should think about, and which are the mantras which are actually myths, and what are the investing mantras I think you should have. And a lot of interesting, you can say almost like blogs on investing, on various aspects of investing. So I think it will be quite an interesting book. It's really my lifetime's learnings that are there. So I think it should be interesting for people to read. And I've made it quite simple so that you don't have to be a finance expert, barring, a couple of chapters which you can skip. It's targeted at people who may not have a background in finance.
Very interesting. Looking forward to reading that one. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Devina, and I'm sure the book will do really well with a lot of insights for our viewers as well. Thanks so much for joining us, and wishing you the best in 2025.
Thank you. Thank you.